Hi everyone, and welcome to today's event. Before we get started, I'm going to review a few housekeeping items. Just a reminder that all participants are muted by default to avoid background noise. If at any point during the presentation, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the question tab to the right side of your screen. We will address all questions at the end of each presentation. You'll also notice a polls tab. Throughout the presentation, I will issue a poll question. That's just to gather more information to see if you want us to reach out to you. The webinar is being recorded. You will automatically receive an email to the link to recording after the webinar. If you're having audio or video issues, please remember that this webinar is through your browser. Please try refreshing your browser to resolve any issues. If you're looking for a dial-in number, please click on the help button, which is up in the right-hand corner, and there will be a phone dial-in and a number and code to use for this particular webinar. All right, Rory, take it away.
Okay, thanks a lot, Leah. I'll start out by just welcoming everyone and thanking you for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to this session about corrugated and how our products relate to corrugated. We've got some really interesting sessions. We're going to basically start out with kind of having both companies, Esko and DuPont, talk about our product offering, and that'll include some new, some old products. I know that on the Esko side, we're going to be talking about some new products you probably have not heard about. So make sure you stick around through the whole thing to kind of hear about those. And then towards the end of our session today, we have a really nice discussion panel set up. This is the third event that we've done. We did one for labels, we did one for flexibles, and this one, of course, is for corrugated. And we've done this panel discussion in each of those sessions, and it's turned out to be very interesting. So please make sure you stick around for that. Before we go any further, I'd like to allow you guys to get to know Bob and myself. So Bob, I'm just going to ask you to do a quick introduction before we get going here.
Sure, thanks, Rory. This is Bob Henham. I'm the DuPont North American Corrugated Segment Manager. I've been with DuPont for 36 years now, and the last 29 in the Corrugated Flexo plate making business. So look forward to speaking with everyone.
Yep, and I'm Rory Marsoon. I work for Esko as the Director of Business Development for the Flexo products. My background is very technical. I started my career at Clemson University as a faculty member. Actually worked with Bob, and he'd come down and run tests on the equipment there. And about 10 years ago, went to Esko and have kind of had a few different roles there. My current role is really all about making sure that our sales team is supported, as well as our customers. And as we develop products, it's really important that I kind of communicate the word of the North American and Latin American markets to our product team. So always very important that I hear from you guys as far as what it is that you need. So I'm really looking forward to this session. So as we get moving here, we're really going to, in this first block session about our products and our solutions, we're going to break that into really 3 sections. We'll start with Esko Imaging and Exposure Solutions. Bob's going to talk about the DuPont plate solutions, and then I'll come back and I'll talk about our plate cutting solutions. So diving right in here. As you may or may not know, I think most of you probably recognize that Esko's been around a long time, and in our world, one of the big product offerings that you might associate with Esko is the CDI. CDI actually stands for Cyrel Digital Imager. And so the Cyrel part of that name comes from the joint collaboration that occurred about 25 years ago, or a little longer, to actually invent digital plate imaging technology. And that collaboration was between DuPont and Esko. Obviously, we still have a very strong partnership with DuPont, as is represented here today. So as I said, that first CDI was introduced to the market at Drupa in 1995. You can see the little picture there. The CDI fundamentally hasn't changed. We're using a laser to remove a carbon mask layer off of a flexo plate. And that completely did away with film at that time and kind of the analog way of doing things. And over the years, we've seen that technology has evolved, right? So changing the type of laser to a fiber laser, which we still use today, occurred in 2000. That really changed our speed, our quality, really a huge step change with what we were able to do there. And then as years have gone on, we've increased our resolution capabilities. So 4,000 DPI at that time was unheard of, right? Most people running 2,100 or 2,400 DPI on an imager. And then even today, now we have even higher resolutions, up to 10,000 or even more DPI on the imager. Inline UV technology. So this is LED exposure technology. Esko's had a variety of different products related to that. It all started in 2008, so that was now 12 years ago, where we really released the first LED flexo plate exposure. You'll see later on, we're going to talk about the XPS just briefly, and that is kind of the latest generation of LED exposure technology. HD Flexo, Full HD Flexo, and now Print Control Wizard. Those are technologies that really leverage the imaging technology in combination with the screening technology. So that's also going to be a topic of conversation today. Yes, we actually have new screens that are being designed for corrugated. Oh, one more note, you notice almost 4,000 units. So we have a massive installed base that we've accumulated over the years, and very proud to have such a large number of units installed. We really have two major families of imagers that we like to talk about. The first one is the Spark family. These are kind of like our legacy products. They've been around a while, but they are rock solid workhorse type products. A lot of customers still buying these today, and they just get the job done. So you see we have all the different sizes here, starting with very small 1712 all the way up to a 50 by 80, and even some in the round imagers. So in the corrugated marketplace, typically we're in a larger format with the 5080 or 4260 perhaps. And also we have different types of optics available. So different speeds, different quality, all kinds of different options, so you can really kind of design the machine to fit your needs. The second product line is our newest product line. It was introduced at Drupa 2016, 4 years ago, and it's called the Crystal product line. Now the big difference here between the Crystal and the Spark is the Crystal is really designed for simplification of the plate making process. So there's a lot of automation built into this. It uses a touch screen. You can connect these devices and create an automated workflow. And there's future developments occurring where we connect other processors. There's actually a processor now that the Vianord makes that will connect to the end of the XPS. So this is really where we see the future, right? We talk about automation and simplification. On the inside, again, it's really the same type of technology. We're using a laser to remove this carbon layer on the surface of the plate. But in conjunction with other kind of newer optics technologies that allow us to have a little better quality, a little better consistency, a little better speed. Which brings us to a new product that is specifically designed for the corrugated market. And it's called Optics 80 V2. In Europe, they say Optic 100. That's why the S is gone. We usually say Optics 100. So what is Optics 100 V2? This is our fastest optic speed ever available on a CDI. It does go up to 10 square meters per hour. It uses a single imaging head. There are other imagers out there that use dual heads. we feel that the single head technology has a significant advantage over the dual head technology that's out there. So for one thing, you don't have to kind of have those two heads stitched together at some point on the plate. You don't have to worry about where that's going to happen, what kind of image is going to be there, those sorts of things. There's really no stitching at all because it's one head. There's no calibration between those two heads to get a matching quality. We know that matching two lasers takes some effort. Not saying it's impossible, but certainly you're going to see discrepancies between two imaging heads at some point in time. And of course, two laser heads means it's more expensive. There's two optics boxes, there's two lasers, there's two everything. That drives up the service cost and also the cost of ownership overall. So let's talk about the speed. So if we're going to talk about full-size sheets, let's take a 50 by 80 CDI, for example. The current technology that's out there allows us to image at 8 square meters per hour with optics 80. Optics 100 allows us to go to 10 square meters per hour, which is an additional 25% speed increase for every single plate that you make. What does that mean? It means one additional full 50/80 sheet per hour that you can image. 8 additional 50/80 sheets per shift. Part of the technology behind this is also the fact that we're slowing down the drum when we image. That's going to cause much less vibration, less risk of a plate flying off the drum, and overall better imaging quality. If we look at partial plates, which is where we image a plate that's less than the full size of the drum, that's where we see even more improvement in speed. As I mentioned, the drum is rotating much slower than our typical optics today. Today, we often worry about plates flying off. You know, when you have a thick corrugated plate, has a lot of weight to it, and the momentum of that drum swinging that plate around, if you go too fast, the plate will fly off and cause damage inside your machine. So what we've done historically is slow the machine down. Now that we image with slower drum speeds naturally, on a regular basis with this optics 100, we're able to actually double our throughput on partial plates. And if you think about the efficiencies and the productivity gains that you can get from that, it's pretty staggering. And I know a lot of corrugated shops are doing quite a bit of partial plate imaging. If you currently have optics 80 V2, and let's say you're doing high-end work for flexible packaging, things like that, there's no need to worry. Optics 80 or optics 80 V2 is contained inside that. So you might be wondering, okay, what am I actually saying here? Optics 100 V2 is specifically designed for a little bit lower quality work. So we're talking about anything below, say, 120 LPI. You go up higher than that, and you're going to end up wanting to switch over back to the 80 V2 to match the quality you've been getting. So optics 80 V2, it's still there. It's a switch in the machine that we can change anytime in the plate setup. And you're able to do the highest quality work, Pixel Plus, crystal screening, any of the other types of things that you're doing. So you really lose nothing here. Now moving to the exposure technology. Our newest LED exposure technology is called the XPS Crystal, and it uses LEDs to expose the flexo plate. As you look at this image here, you can see it's very simple. It's a glass table, and what you do is you put your plate there after it's been imaged. This green box that you see will move across the plate. And when it does that, it's exposing not only the face of the plate, but also the back of the plate at the same time. That head will move back and back across that plate several times, depending on the plate material, the thickness, what kind of relief you want, all these different things. There's a lot of variables. We can actually control the speed of that head. We can control also the amount of energy that's being emitted from the head to really give us the optimal quality. One of the cool things about this is that Esko has invested a tremendous amount of time in conjunction with our partners like DuPont to develop settings for each plate type and each plate thickness that are already preloaded in the machine. So what the user has to do is simply select that plate, run a very simple, quick exposure test to determine the correct reliefs, and then you're ready to go. And you're going to be promised the highest level quality with those settings. Now, I will say this. Our primary focus with this system to this point has been thin plates, flexible packaging, labels, etc. We do have some corrugated plates certified on this system, and we will continue to certify more. But our first kind of area of work has been in the thin plate world. So right now we have some 125 plates and 155 plates. We have not gone to the thick plates just yet. If you're really interested in the XPS, let us know. We're happy to have a conversation with you and let you know exactly which plates are certified. And certainly if a customer says, hey, I'm really interested in this technology, but I need these plates certified, we will look very closely at getting those plates certified. So if we just boil down the core benefits of the XPS, there's really three things. The first thing that we have to talk about is always consistency. That's the whole reason we use LEDs for exposure, originally was just to get better consistency. We know that the tubes we use today, they degrade over time. The output energy goes down usually quite quickly. And at a certain point, your quality starts to suffer. Constantly having to adjust the exposure times to kind of maintain quality. Then when it's time to change the bulbs, I think we all know that's a pretty big hassle to change all those bulbs, burn in the bulbs. And then, of course, you got to start over now with new exposure settings to get back where you want to be. The LED system, those diodes last for about 10 times longer than any tubes in the industry. And the life cycle of those diodes is that they're very, very, very stable over the entire life of the diode. And then when it does die, they just stop working. There's no degradation that occurs. What that means is every time I hit the button to expose a plate, I get the same result. And that's a beautiful thing for a person in a plate room. No more worrying about measuring tubes, no more worrying about adjusting exposure times, no more worrying about changing tubes. You know when you hit the button, it's going to give you the best result and the consistent result every single time. So second, we have quality. So when we certify plates, we come up with new settings. Our criteria is that we must at least match the quality of bakelite and surpass it if possible. And I'll tell you, in most cases, we are easily able to surpass the quality of a bakelite exposure with LED. Sometimes we make decisions about how much quality we're going to get in exchange for exposure times and things like that. But in general, you're almost always going to get a little better quality, which means a little smaller highlight dots, thinner lines, just overall better tone reproduction, those sorts of things. And then the last one is it's the key to automation. So I mentioned that we're going to be automating more and more of the plate making process. And that is all built around the XPS. We have some systems now that move the plate from the CDI to the XPS. And then we have systems that move from the plate from the XPS to the washout. There is no plan to do that for banklights. So this will be the central kind of piece that enables automation. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Bob and let him talk about DuPont plates for corrugated.
Okay, thanks, Rory. If you can go to the next slide, please. Today, I'd like to discuss three main topics. First, I'll talk about how DuPont views or segments the corrugated market. And then I'll talk about the importance of quality, both from the perspective of the printing plates and also the printing. And then I'll wrap up this portion of the session by talking about our plate portfolio and how it meets the corrugated segment needs. Okay. DuPont views the market in three categories. We kind of frame it as a triangle. On the top, you've got the high-end graphics, which is by far the smallest printing subsegment, typically comprising of 3 or 4 or more process colors and really pushing the envelope with respect to line, screen rolling, and complexity. This segment is the most profitable due to the graphic challenges and value of these graphics, both from an advertising and an appearance perspective. So basically, these types of packages are selling what's inside the box. The middle segment is what we call the medium subsegment. It consists of 2 or 3 colors. It's much simpler graphics. Typical boards types use are B and C flute. And then the largest segment, which is what we call the low-end printing, and not from a print quality perspective, but from a graphics perspective. Again, it's very simple 1 and 2 color line work. But these images still have a purpose, and good ink laydown is important, as I will discuss in a few minutes. So if we go to the next slide, as we look at like a plate to print formula, as with any business, it's important to first understand the market you're selling into and then develop products to meet those market needs. It goes without saying that you need to deliver a high quality product regardless of where you are in the value chain. Market leaders such as DuPont bring innovation that help drive growth for the corrugated industry. And I would also encourage you to partner with industry leaders such as DuPont and Esko and others to take advantage of the knowledge and products that will help continue to drive your business and grow it in this tough market conditions. So on the next slide, you'll see that DuPont is proud of its key contributions to the corrugated market over the past 30 years, as Rory mentioned, the CDI, but back even before then, DuPont invented the first photopolymer sheet printing plate in 1974. And then we came out with our first analog corrugated plate called TDR a little bit later, probably in the early 80s. And then in mid-90s, again, we developed the first digital plate along with the, as Rory mentioned before, about the CDI, the Spiral Digital Imager. In 2008, we introduced our first flat top dot technology, what we call DigiCore, which is taking a nitrogen workflow with our digital plates. Since then, we've introduced a flat top dot in the plate, and more recently, a very successful load durometer sheet plate, which I'll cover a little bit more. So now that we've, go to the next slide, please, that we've segmented the market, we need to focus on which plates are needed to meet the wide spectrum of printing needs. First and foremost, you need to have plates that have several different characteristics. We view the three most important ones are, first of all, you need to have a uniform plate and thickness, especially when printing on thick, uneven substrates like corrugated board. If the finished plate thick is uniform, then the less impression is going to be needed, and your print setups will be much quicker since the ink is laying down uniformly. Conversely, if you have one side that prints first or a portion within the design prints first and the others do not, then obviously you've got to add more impression to get ink across the board where it's supposed to be, which could lead to excess dot gain or reverses filling in or barcodes getting fatter. The second one obviously is image holding capability is another key demand. We know as the presses are getting better, the graphic demands are getting more challenging from CPGs, and for Flexo to compete with offset, we really need to have the plates can hold fine detail. And some of our plates are specifically formatted to meet those challenges. And then again, with Esko CDI Spark, which is very precise and reliable, it's a good combination. So if you have a uniform plate and you're holding the graphics, that's all well and good, but the plate has to release ink as it's intended as well when the printing occurs. So DuPont sheet plates certainly release ink very well and are not as tacky as some liquid photopolymer resins. So the next slide, let's look at some of the print quality demands. First is the ability to print on different substrates. You've got the liners are different, board thicknesses vary. As I mentioned before, a wide range of graphics are used. 1 and 2 color designs require quality printing. With the trend to more recycled content and thinner liners, the need for good solid uniform ink coverage is even more important now. and so are readable barcodes and obviously brand recognition. So we in Flexo continue to try to gain business from the competing printing processes. This is how the top part of that triangle I showed previously grows. So it requires the highest quality Flexo solution to do this. So let's take a look a little bit closer about DuPont's high-end graphic solutions in more detail. Next slide, please. One more, please. So for the high-quality graphics, as I mentioned, DuPont's Digicore flat technology is by far the most widely used and accepted technology in the corrugated market. Since its introduction in 2008, the combination of Digicore and our DPC plates have won more industry awards than any other technology or plate on the market then and even today. This has really made a step change improvement to help Flexo printers convert litho business. More recently, DuPont has introduced our plate called EPC, which is our flat top dot built into the plate. And we have several customers using this 100% of the time for their high-end graphic requirements. Next slide. These photos are a little bit dated. You may have seen these in the past for those on the call that know DuPont, but it's pretty still visually impressive today. So on the far left, you've got what we called, when we first came out with a digital plate DPC for corrugated, it was a round top dot. The downside is printing a round top dot on a corrugated board with uneven surface created tremendous fluting, as you see in the girl's face. When we looked at Digicore with the flat top dot, that fluting went away, and this is an 85 line screen image. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the same result, and actually this is a 150 line screen. Again, the fluting just is virtually eliminated. To the next slide, please. So here's an example of a 2018 Best of Show Corby Award winner at I believe Tappy Award, Supercore, the Tappy Awards. It was printed with Digicore and DPC plates, and the amazing thing about this design, it was printed with only 4 colors. So you've got a lot going on in there with the different colors and the different graphics, and again, DPC Digicore did an outstanding job and won that Best of Show. Okay, next slide, please. And then these are just a couple other designs. On the left, you had a previous FTA award winner with DPC Digicore as well. And the 2 on the right are other examples that were actually printed in Europe. Pretty intricate designs with a lot of whites, a lot of detail. And, if you could see the boxes look closely, they look absolutely beautiful. And those are all direct print corrugated. Next slide. So for those companies who may be using analog plates now and looking to get into the digital world and transition to a digital workflow, EPC with its flat top dot built in the plate is also an excellent option. If you're in that position, there's really no need to invest in the Digicore technology because, again, the flat top dot is built in. All you need to do is basically get your minimum dot set, do your characterize your press with the new plates, and enjoy the enhanced printing experience because the EPC plates print very well as well. And the next slide, these are 4 examples. The picture on the top right was actually an E-flute board, and then the other 3 were B-flute. You literally see no fluting in that. The detail in these photos these print samples are absolutely phenomenal. And again, this is with the latest plate called EPC. Okay, so let's take a look at the DuPont solution for the opposite side of the graphic spectrum, which is the simple 1 and 2 color graphics. So DuPont commercialized our DLC plate globally in the first quarter of 2019, a little over a year ago, and I can say without hesitation that this product has been wildly successful in its early stages of its product life cycle. It's even being specified by certain printers, which is pretty uncommon in corrugated printing today. So it's been got a great start with this product. The 3 key benefits are it's got great solid ink density and laydown. It eliminates that fluted appearance in the solid areas, and I'll show you some examples in a minute. Less impression is needed to transfer the ink, thus reducing plate wear and press stoppages of the clean plates. And the 3rd key benefit is wider impression latitude. Due to its soft durometer, operators are able to squeeze harder on impression to handle boards with thickness variations while not jeopardizing the edge crust specification. And I'll share some data with that in a minute. So as the market trend to thinner plates increase, next slide please, Rory. You know, when I mentioned earlier that there's a trend and been a trend of the liner that you're printing on is getting thinner. And when that happens, it's going to create a printing challenge. And as I show the picture on the bottom, as the top liner conforms into flute valleys, where I'm showing the green arrow, you kind of see where it dips in because it's not as rigid. More impression is going to be needed to get that ink to print into those valleys. And then when you add more impression, with typically a standard durometer corrugated plate, it causes the corrugated medium to compress more, which is where I have the the red arrow pointing down, and thus possibly jeopardizing the box strength, integrity, and also the graphics. More impression, as I mentioned before, more dot gain, more fill in. Text gets fatter, the reverses start to fill in some. So by going thinner, and the reason people are going thinner is to save cost, it creates a printing challenge. So we looked at that trend, and we said we need to come up with a plate that can compete with that, and that's why we developed DLC. So here are a few print samples to show you the DLC's advantages. On the top left, you have basically a standard durometer liquid plate, 155 thickness. The 155 DPC is what I would call our standard durometer plate for corrugated printing. And then you've got 155 DLC, and you can see right away how that fluting appearance in the solids virtually just disappears with the use of DLC. And then you can see the bottom sample came from a customer, and you can see that the blue printed absolutely beautiful, no fluting appearance. And yet with the black plate, they're able to keep those barcode lines very, very crisp and thin, and the text very, very legible. So again, that kind of leads towards that impression latitude where you're pushing to get good solids, good coverage, but you're not having to jeopardize the graphics. And then the sample on the right was another customer. This customer was running a competitive standard durometer sheet plate, and they put our DLC plate material in. Again, nothing really changed with the press setup, board, anything, and they just put our DLC plate in. As you can see, a significant advantage over the standard durometer competitive plate, and customer was ecstatic and converted over right away. So the next slide, this was also a customer sample. If you see on the bottom, the blue has that fluted appearance. The only thing that they changed was they put the DLC plate in the blue on the top design. And you can see here as well how that fluting appearance, disappeared. So again, another happy customer. So the next slide, Rory, if you could just stop there, and I'll actually hit twice more in a minute. Go back if you could. So I don't know if anybody, this is a rhetorical question because obviously we're not having a conversation back and forth, but if you can see anything in that design that piques your interest. You may not see it right away, but if you can go one more, Rory. And if you can notice anything about that sample now, and then go one more. So what you see in this was a sample, craft sample, 32 ECT, not an easy board to print on. We use 300 line screen analogs with an 8 BCM. So we're bringing up a lot of ink. And you can see that was a 4-point trademark reverse, stay completely open throughout this press run. Again, it's very, very impressive with the amount of ink you're bringing up, and again, talks to the latitude of the plate and when you're setting impression with the operators. So next slide. We went to Clemson University Packaging Science Lab and asked them to do a edge crush test for us. Some of the photos here are the measure or the equipment that was used. The hypothesis is that the board printed with a harder plate, let's say our DPC plate, will weaken when printed and will fail quicker than the sample printed with a softer plate. So thus taking less pounds of pressure per inch to cause the failure. The failure you'll see, and the gentleman who's holding it in his hand, is that crease in the board. So when the amount of pressure is pushed from the top down, that flat piece of corrugated 2x2 inch sample will eventually crease. And when it creases, that's when you measure the amount of pounds it took. So the hypothesis is you've weakened the board going through the press with a harder plate, that it would fail quicker. So if you can go to the next slide. The the lab took, these are the conditions where they put the samples into a relative humidity chamber for a week. And then they measured, they took 10 samples from 4 different printed boards of the same like board or like design. So they used 40 samples each to make the data statistically significant, and they followed the TAPI T839 standard for edge crush for their measurements. The next slide, please. So as you can see by the data, the 10 thousandths over impression, which is on the right, if you look at the top, that's a standard durometer DPC plate. Well, I'll describe what optimum impression means first, which we basically take the design, and you're going to put ink on the board, and you're going to make sure there's no trail edge void, that the solids are covered, and you're not over impressing. So it's, we wouldn't call it a KISS impression, but an optimum impression. So there is some impression to print, and that's where we'd set our first impression. The over impression, we just cranked in 10 thousandths more. And you can see on the data in the top right, the edge crush value average went from 26.6 down to 24.4, which basically proved the hypothesis that that harder plates will affect the edge crush value. That's about an 8% reduction. Conversely, if you look at the DLC data on the bottom, basically there was 0 impact on ECT with this plate. Okay, next slide, please. So for those of you on the call now, if you've not made that transition to digital yet, wanted to let you know that DuPont most recently released our analog version of DLC called ALC. And ALC has similar print characteristics and focused on the brown box printing. Next slide. So similar test done at Clemson. I believe this was done at Clemson. This is C Flute Craft, 26-pound liner. On the right, you've got our analog TDR plate. Again, you got a lot of fluting and misprinting in the valleys of the flutes, and then the ALC clean that up right away. So again, just another example of what you saw in DLC. We are seeing that in the analog version as well. The next slide. So basically, to summarize, DuPont has the most complete product portfolio in the market today, and to meet every corrugated printing demand, from the 1 to 2 color simple designs to the complex multicolor high-end graphics. And you can see that I didn't cover every plate we have, but I covered the ones that were the most recent. So with that, Roy, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, awesome, Bob. Thank you. All right, so now moving on, we're going to talk about our plate cutting and also plate marking solutions. We've had a product called Digital Flexo Suite. You'll hear it called DFS. It's been on the market for a good long time now, more than 10 years, probably more like 15 at this point. But the corrugated, plate making kind of marketplace is really where this product brings so many benefits. And so I felt that it was really important that we talk about this some today. What is DFS? DFS is a product that allows us to interface between the imager, a cutting table, and a mounter. And there's many different workflows we can do. It allows us to obviously image plates in a variety of different ways. We can obviously connect straight into a CDI, but we can output to any output device that can accept a TIFF. We can cut plates on a Kongsberg table with a bevel tool or a straight cutting tool. Lots of flexibility there. And we can also cut carrier sheets on that Kongsberg table. And then if we kind of take it another step further, we can actually send coordinates for mounting to certain advanced mounting systems. So here we've got an AV Flexologic system pictured. We can connect to Heford and a number of others that are out there. So I know that a lot of corrugated trade shops already use DFS. And for those, I would say you figured it out. This is one of those things, if I was a corrugated trade shop, I would say this is a must-have. This allows for, you know, a much more efficient, cleaner workflow, reduce a lot of the manual mounting that happens. It makes your plates just look better, more professional. It's just an awesome solution for corrugated. So what can DFS do for you? So one thing for sure, it's accurately cutting plates. So not only is this for corrugated, it's a solution for thin plates as well. So, you know, just generally cutting plates. I image a plate on a CDI, I take it to the Kongsberg table, I cut it out. I can use the Kongsberg table to also identify the plate. And there's a variety of ways to do this. The most common way is with a pen tool, uses usually a felt tip marker. You can do that on the surface of the plate or on the back of the plate, depending on the workflow that you're using. And then it's just nice to be able to send some plates into the press room, into your customers that look professional. So when you use a Kongsberg table to cut a plate with a bevel tool, there's no plate that looks cleaner than that, right? It's obviously cut by a machine, an exact 45-degree angle. The carrier sheet is exactly cut to the right size. The carrier sheet is marked with a marker with labeling. You can even draw the die line of whatever container you're printing or die cutting onto the carrier sheet, which is nice. So there's a value add for your customers. They will see what you're doing as an improvement. Automation. So in your plate room, you're going to save on labor. You're going to save on plate wastage. We've got a lot of tools, ROI tools, that help calculate this. And we've done this for, I already mentioned, more than 10 years now. And a lot of times it's one of those ROIs where you look at it and you're not sure that it could be that good. And so we sometimes fudge that a little bit and make it look a little more believable, but we always achieve the ROI that we calculate. It's a kind of an amazing product with huge value. And then automation, right? So that goes hand in hand with the labor savings, where we're cutting out manual steps. We're cutting out the manual cutting process, which, by the way, most people underestimate how long they take to cut a plate. Dramatically underestimate the amount of time it takes to cut a plate. Then there's the factor of safety, right? So you think about hand cutting or using like a guillotine cutter, some kind of large cutting device. You know, there's a pretty substantial risk of injury when you're manually handling those type of cutting tools. With a Kongsberg table, a cutting table, you know, obviously that's all being done automatically. The only time the operator comes into contact with a sharp object is the case where they have to change a blade on the Kongsberg table, which I can't say that I've heard of too many people being cut during that process. And there's reporting that comes out of it. It's just a nice workflow, right? So at the core of Digital Flexo Suite is a product we call Plate Patcher. Plate Patcher takes your TIFF files or LEN files from whatever box it is that you're going to go mount, and it takes the artwork and it patches it. That's not a new concept, right? The idea of you know, not mounting a big giant full sheet of photopolymer onto a carrier sheet and saving the photopolymer and kind of those non-image areas is not a new concept. But this was really the first tool that was put out in the marketplace, and it's been out for a while, but is the first tool that really automated that. So our software takes the TIFF or LEN files, analyzes that, and automatically breaks them down into patches. And the operator has the ability to kind of control how those patches are made. So if you want to group, maybe you don't want to have little tiny patches, maybe, so you group a few small patches together to make one big patch. There's a lot of flexibility there. It's a very, very powerful tool. And in Plate Patcher, that's where the system recognizes how those graphics are going to be laid out onto a carrier sheet. And it'll even oftentimes have the die line there. And from that point, once you hit the go button on Plate Patcher, it's generating the coordinates for the mounter, or it's generating cut information for the carrier sheet. All of these different bits of information kind of come out of that process. And the user's not having to do any of this manually, right? It just happens. So this is an example of, I would say, our most popular workflow for DFS for corrugated. We call it the plot and cut workflow. And this is where the system creates the patches we just talked about, and also is creating cut lines and also labeling for a carrier sheet. What it does is, you take a piece of your carrier sheet material, you put it on the Kongsberg table, it cuts that out, labels it. It will draw a box for each of the patches, put crosshairs. It'll also label each of those boxes so that the operator, whoever's going to mount that, can reference the patch, which also has a label, to the box on the carrier sheet. They apply some kind of sticky back to the plate before it's cut, or it's not sticky back, it's more like a two-sided tape, right? Adhesive. Apply that before it's cut. And then after the plates are cut, you peel off the little protective layer on the adhesive, and you simply stick it down and register. Now, there's obviously a manual kind of operation here. It does depend on the operator to kind of stick that plate into the correct location. And for that reason, I don't often go around telling people that this is going to give me the tightest register. I don't tell somebody this is going to mount more accurately than some kind of video mounting system. But what this is really good for is your, 1, 2 color, maybe 3 color, loose register type of work, which represents a huge majority of the corrugated work that's being done today. And you can do that without even taking it to a mounter. This is just flat mounted, and it's just a dead simple workflow.
Hey, Rory, if this is Bob, if I can interject.
Yeah,
well, we've been using this in our lab for years when we had the Kongsberg table there, and I can certainly attest to the ease of mounting. With the way it's plotted onto the carrier sheet and the way that's the same marks that are on the plate, it's virtually impossible to mount it upside down. So you're going to get very accurate registration, and just by eye, again, as Rory mentioned, 1 and 2 color work, it's very quick, very simple. And for the folks that like the least amount of polymer on a carrier sheet as you can get, this certainly fits the bill. Looks like an island plate, very lightweight. So this is good for the printers who want to have the lightest weight mounts as possible, but yet very quick. So even though it's a manual process, it's still a very quick way to mount.
Absolutely. And a lot of times what I'll kind of see our trade shop partners doing, which by the way, a lot of trade shops have this and use it. They'll use this for their simple work, as I said, and that frees up their mounters to do more high-end work, right? So, it may prevent a shop from having to invest into an additional mounter, right? Because they're pulling some of this work off of that, off the mounters they have, so it frees up more capacity there. Very powerful tool. I actually have a video that I'd like to show. It doesn't show the whole workflow, but it kind of gives you an idea of watch the table cutting. So I'm going to go ahead and play that now. All right, so hopefully that gives you a good idea of exactly what we're talking about. As I said, just a really cool workflow. Now, the historic way that we've done things with DFS is with a felt tip pen. We do have a new development that's approaching release. And I just want to share that with you guys today. This is not available now. I just want to make that clear. But this is something that will be available in the near future. So we're calling this technology Plate ID. So as you probably have already kind of understood from some of the slides I've already shown, there's really a couple ways that people label plates today. Of course, if you don't have a Kongsberg table, obviously you're just gonna write it by hand. You label the plate with a marker, somebody hand writes it. There are obvious problems with that, right? Writing the wrong file name or writing the wrong information, the wrong color. There's all kinds of room for error there. Then there's the Kongsberg table, which does a nice job of labeling with a pen. There is an issue there, honestly, though, and that is that if you take alcohol and you wipe it, that pen can be wiped off. It is not a permanent marking on the plate in most cases. So this is just kind of a list of some of the issues that we have with today's current marking solution. So I already mentioned with DFS, the ink can get washed off. If we mark the back of the plate with a scribe tool, which is another way to do it, sometimes that will actually transfer to the printing surface and you can see it in the print. It does take time for the Kongsberg table to label a plate. It also takes time if the mounter were to image the label onto the plate or even the mounting marks onto the plate. Then, I've seen so many people with toenail clippers, removing that information from the plate so that it doesn't print. That takes time. And then the obvious stuff with manuals, right? We already talked about human error. And then sometimes they're using a sharp tool, which can be a safety concern. So what is Plate ID? I can't give you a tremendous amount of information here, unfortunately. But if you look at the diagram in the top left there, it kind of explains what that is. If we look at this and we just pretend this is a plate, and you have the printing surface way up here, and then you have the floor of your plate way down here. Plate ID actually allows us to raise a very low profile image off the floor of the plate to keep it very far from the printing surface, but also allow us to very easily read it. So this is a 100% permanent solution. Can't be removed with alcohol, can't be wiped off, doesn't print. There's all kinds of benefits here. And moving forward, there'll be even more things that we do with this, with plate tracking, being able to put register marks into the plate with this system, maybe even putting, if you're a trade shop, you can put your logo in the floor of the plate. There's probably, hundreds of different ideas that we could have for this. So we are currently in pre-release for this technology right now, and you'll be seeing it in the marketplace very soon. So just wanted to present that as a teaser. With that, we have wrapped up our slides, and we're going to move into the questions. So we have, looks like, if you haven't, by the way, if you have a question, I'd say go ahead and submit it now for Bob or for me related to the content that we just covered. Bob, it looks like there's a question for you. Or I'm sorry, there's two questions for you. Maybe
is this
not.
the one about the Shore?
Did somebody already answer it? Okay, Gabriella she already answered it.
Okay, yeah, just real quick, the Shore of our 250 plate, which DLC is a large portion of those sales, is about 25 Shore. And our DPC, which is more of our standard durometer, is about 33. So that's the difference.
Very good. Okay. There is a question that just popped in, or a couple questions. When do you think that plate marking will be available? Okay, so talking about Plate ID. We are targeting probably first part of next year it will be available. We are doing pre-release now. So certain of our partners are starting to experiment with that. If you want to know more, you want to find out how you can be part of the pre-release or test it out or just learn more information, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to work with you on that. All right, Bob, there's a question here for you. How new is the ALC, and is it the same shore as the DLC?
Yes. Hey, Daniel. Yes, it's the same Shore A. So it's basically from a polymer standpoint, it's very similar to DLC. It just does not have the black mask on for digital imaging. So and it's very new, probably in the last month.
Okay. All right. There's a question here. Looks like for me. With Optics 80 V2 within Optics 100 V2, does the operator need to flip the switch you described, or does the plate type tell the digital imager which optics to use? It is a different plate type. So on the CDI, the Optics 100 will be referred to as speed mode. So you will, you may have a plate, maybe it's, DPC 125 speed mode or DPC 125 standard mode. Right, so you select which type of mode you want by selecting the plate in the plate list. All right. Can plate ID be used on thin plates as well? So plate ID, yes, it can. We're actually starting with corrugated. And the main reason for that is that obviously in corrugated we're making thicker plates with more relief, and so there's a lot more margin for error there. Meaning, if I've got 60 thousandths worth of relief, if my plate ID is varying by 5 thousandths of an inch, it's probably not going to print. On a thin plate application, I have a lot less relief, and therefore a lot less margin for error. So the answer is yes, we will be doing it on thin plates. At the moment, it appears that the requirement for thin plates will be that you must have an XPS. And that is simply just to allow us to control that relief and the exposure much more precisely for those thin plates. At the moment, it does not appear that the XPS will be required for your corrugated plates. Of course, these are unreleased products, so it's all subject to change. Just want to say that, but that's kind of where we're heading here. There's a question here that says ink transfer question mark.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. If that person would like to elaborate, I'm sure we'd be happy to answer. Okay, another question about plate ID. Is plate ID going to be written as metadata in the LIN, or is it a CDI function? Plate ID is happening actually within the DFS workstation or the plate prep workstation as it exists today. But this product will evolve. We're again in the kind of the early stages of it. So as of today, it is not part of the metadata. It is, it can be written on onto a file at the CDI. Okay. Okay, so looks like there was somebody, the person elaborated. Ink transfer, this was elaborating on the ink transfer, I believe. Bleached or scraped printing without good tension on papers is very common. Does Shore A facilitate correct printing?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I
think I'll be talking about some screening technology that we're developing here shortly. And that is one thing that we've learned about is that, some of the new liners out there, they're made with maybe recycled fibers, or it's just low quality. They do have a tendency not to absorb ink in the same way. And so ink laydown becomes an issue in those situations. But how that relates to plate material, I certainly couldn't say.
Yep. And perhaps the panel could answer that. I don't really, I've not heard those terms before, so.
Yeah. Okay. Can the Kongsberg table cut 45-degree corners instead of 90-degree corners when cutting the plates? So I think what we're talking about is kind of like a chamfer on the corner. So the answer is yes, absolutely. The Kongsberg table can cut the corner off to where we're not, we don't have that 90-degree corner, and many users do that. So I know that a lot of the stuff I showed had a straight 90-degree corner, but it's a very simple option in the software. Okay. On a multicolor job, has DLC been used in one color and a harder plate for another? Does this cause any registration issues? So mixing two different plates.
Yep. So good question, Ron. We actually did a test for this particular question at Clemson in one of our trials. I actually have 2 or 3 slides on it. I did not include it in this presentation, but we did take our DPC. We just ran 2 colors, so we did a we did the DLC and we used DPC. So we had a registration target. I think it went from 0 trap, 1/128th, 1/64th, 1/32nd. And we printed those both. We had them in 4 different quadrants. So we looked at from lead edge to trail edge. It fit, within 128th. And if you look we look from far bottom left to far right of that image, and it's about a 30 by 40 image we printed. It was within a 64th of an inch. So we did think about that, saying is a harder plate and a softer plate. Obviously, with impressions, they're going to want to move a little bit more. But we did not see any registration issues at all. But I don't know if people who are using DLC do this on a regular basis. I've not heard that they have, but from the testing we did at Clemson, we saw no issues at all.
Okay, looks like we have one more question. Does DLC work well with screening?
I don't think we've really tried it with screening. We're getting such good ink laydown that I don't even know if screening will be needed, but if there is even a better benefit, there's no reason why it can't.
Yep. And it looks like we had a comment here, not a question. It says, we at VT mix DLC and DPC all the time with no registration problems. So just confirming what you said. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Yep.
Okay. Great questions. Love that. All right. With that, we will move on to our next section, which is really focused on software. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the torch over to Sean Osborne, who is going to talk about some of our software products for corrugated.
All right. Thanks, Rory. Let me share my screen now. There we go. You guys should all be able to see my presentation now. Rory, let me know if you can. As Rory said, and you guys can read from the slide, my name is Sean. I've been with Esko about 10 years now. I work on the software pre-sale side of things. I have a role similar to Rory's, except instead of concentrating on imaging hardware and screening, I concentrate on pre-press software editors and RIPs and workflow. So I'm here to talk to you guys today about packaging design management and a few of the Esko software tools. As most of you probably know, Esko develops and manufactures some of the printing industry's most successful software and hardware solutions. There we go. With all this experience and all this knowledge that we've gained from all these devices and all this software and whatnot that we've put out there, we've spent a lot of time talking with customers, finding out what kind of issues they're dealing with. And in the last few years, we've noticed that a lot of our customers in the corrugated world in particular are dealing with a lot of changes in the dynamics of packaging design and management. So it leaves them asking questions, what's the status of this product? How do I get these proofs out faster? Has this design been updated? Has this die been ordered? Where is this in my production cycle? All those types of things. And what is Esko's answer to that? Well, Sorry, wrong slide. There we go. So how do you guys, typically keep track of art files or structural designs or your sample making process or your approvals and whatnot? Well, typically the answer from Esko has been Web Center, right? For some time now, that's been our answer. Web Center was specifically designed to be an online CAD database, a customer-facing approval tool, a file management tool. It has process management built into it. Well, in 2008, Esko queried a bunch of our customers, and we asked them, what kind of problems are you experiencing with your design management process? And we've got the top few of their answers here on this chart. Number one, honestly, was a surprise to me, was unclear design requests. I sure thought lack of visibility, tracking, and reporting my jobs. Where's this job at in the cycle? I thought that would be higher, but again, this is the number one problem that customers reported, simply unclear design requests. I've got this, a sales rep called in a job and wants, a quote for this job on this stock, and then maybe they didn't give me the stock, maybe they didn't give me the quantity, maybe they didn't give me any of the sizes, I didn't get enough information, those types of things. And likely related to that secondary one, we've got long approval times was their number two answer. Likely related to that is the fact that 73% of the 524 customers surveyed responded with their main tool for tracking jobs and handling approvals and all that type of thing is email. And of course, we all know that this approach is risky because it's got largely uncontrolled, it's highly inefficient, lacks accountability, and it lacks traceability. By the way, for those of you wondering, 73% of 524 survey responses is roughly 382 people. So what are we Esko doing to meet these challenges for the corrugated industry? What was our response to all this? Well, we went and looked at our Web Center product and said, you know what? Let's build something that is pre-configured for our corrugated customers. Let's put together a package that's easy to implement. It's an out-of-the-box solution that can be tweaked and customized a little bit, but it works right out of the box day one. So that's what we did. We launched a product called Web Center Pre-Configured for Corrugated. Now, what makes it pre-configured is the fact that it works out of the box. There's no months of long ramp-up times and whatnot. What makes this different than a typical Web Center solution is, again, it's out of the box. It works. You can customize it. You can tweak it, but day one out of the box, it works. It implements best practices and consistency into your workflow. Centralizes your assets, data assets, online approvals, process flows. It's got a nice, simple user interface that anybody with a username and password and a web browser can access. In fact, I'm going to access it today with 3 different web browsers. And yes, we can integrate with an MIS or ERP order entry system. And then all of that leads up to that last one there, rapid deployment, meaning, again, out of the box, it just works. So Web Center Pre-Configured for Corrugated is, it solves the issue of poor design requests or missing information and all of that simply by allowing us, as you can see, nice clean interface here. This is an example of a design request, so a digitized design request form. And we do things like force people to put in specific data, certain required fields. We can force the customer or a CSR or a sales rep, whoever it is, to put in the pieces of data that the next person in the chain needs in order to do their job. This kind of speeds everything up, saves us from having to go back and make calls or send emails. What flute do they want that on? What quantity do they need? What's the dimensions? Who's the customer? All those types of questions. If you can't, or something as simple as requiring a few fields can ensure that the next person handling it has all the data that they need, we make it very simple. You cannot continue on until we have the required data. And this required data can be set up by you. It can be modified from what we've put into the standard solution. So you can require your sales reps to enter the data that you need in order to do your, whatever the next person is in the flow to do their job. And again, that gets us back to unclear design requests here in this chart. Number one reason Our number one issue that customers were having is unclear design requests. Well, if we go back and we force people to put in the pieces of data that we need in order to have a clear design request, that number one issue gets taken away right off the bat, right at the beginning of the process. So in developing this solution, Esko consulted with several of our customers, and we asked them straight up, hey, what is required for a project to go from beginning to end in your facility? Starting from the moment a request is submitted to the point at which an order is completed or canceled, or you no longer have to worry about it, right? What happens? Well, so this ready-made solution took all of those answers into consideration, and we built pre-configured workflows that take into account the creation of estimates, structural designs, and of course, artwork. Now, all of this is just a beginning. You can, of course, add on, change your web center, do whatever else you want to do to it. But this kind of handles the basics and gets it, again, out of the box solution that works. And of course, we included staged approval points and rejection loops to ensure maximum efficiency and make sure that options were in there. If somebody rejects this, who does it go back to? Not it just sitting there on somebody's outbox or email inbox or never land of the internet. So again, clear, simple dashboard reinforces visibility and transparency. Anybody with access to a project can quickly see what's going on. You know, they can get a reminder of project status or actions that they are required. You get their little to-do list over here. Or they could simply log in to add a message or to add an extra note so that the next person or the next people to be looking at this project have more information in order to be able to do their job. So again, centralized resources, a consistent way of handling files and processes, and keeping all of our data together in one nice, easy to use package. And with that, I will jump over now to my web center, actually log into a quick demo for you guys. So again, any web browser, phone, tablet, laptop, anybody with a username and password has access. When they log in now, after you guys have seen the web center in the past and haven't seen it recently, we've included dashboards as a kind of a standard now. So anybody that logs in can quickly see what's going on. What do I have to do? What's waiting on me? What's the status of this project? What steps have already occurred in this project? What's the next step? Who's that assigned to? When is that? When was that started? All those types of things. Again, we've also got the nice discussion board over here. We can also truncate this view a little bit by quickly clicking on just any of these color blocks across the top. If I just want to see which of my jobs are ready for production, I click on that ready for production icon, and my list of jobs is truncated down to just the jobs, just those 5 jobs. As a sales rep, I want to put in a new request. So again, inside sales, outside sales, your sales rep could be sitting at a customer, just wanting to request a quote. They could pull up their phone or their laptop and put in some information, pick a customer, pick a few necessary pieces of information and get that quote ready to go quickly. In this case, I am tied to an MIS system, so my customer names are already populated in my possibilities. Again, benefits of being tied to an MIS system. As a sales rep, I can assign who's my CSR going to be, or I could have that defaulted because I work with one CSR, or I have to go to a group of CSRs. And if I need to, I can assign a purchasing agent or anybody else that could be in this. Again, pre-configured out of the box. This is how it works. We can always add or subtract. I can put in a request to have a new product created, or I can modify an existing product. So if a customer has something, or even a different customer that I have access to, had a shape created, I can access that and ask my structural designer to make changes to it. this case, I'm just going to do a new request, and we're going to say the customer wants a quote for quantities of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, and why not? Let's do 10,000. And let's see if I have a product receipt. We're going to make this an RSC shipper. So let's say that I haven't got a product yet. I'm just going to call this simple RSC. Single box, nothing, no extra parts. My design specifications and special instructions. I am going to tell my structural designer, please add handholds, because that's not going to be part of my default here. And I'm going to run a standard. And this being an RSC, my RSC standard. And for the sake of today, we're just going to quickly do nothing special, just do a square box. So I have to enter length, width, and depth. Anything with has an asterisk next to it is a mandatory field or required field. I have to choose a fluting. Excuse me. Sorry. Sorry, folks, had a coughing fit there. So I choose my fluting and my board code and hit create project. WebSitter has automatically gone through, created my RSC and generated my CAD file for it, created a new project. And go back over here to my dashboard. I can see now I have an extra a new project in here, and I can see what step it's on. So now the next step in the default workflow is this goes over to the design manager. So I am going to switch over to a different web browser and log in as the design manager. In this case, the design manager doesn't have a whole lot to do. As you can see, they've got a slightly different view than the sales rep. They didn't have, and again, this can be customized more, take more buttons away or add more buttons to it. This design manager hasn't exactly been keeping up with what they need to be doing. So my new project's all the way down here on the bottom of their to-do list. Anyway, we click on that. And we see there's a couple things that I need to do. I need to approve or reject this job. I'm going to go ahead and accept it. And I'm going to assign a structural designer. Well, I see in the notes that I need to have somebody add a handhold. So I'm going to assign that to one of my designers that's capable of doing that kind of thing. Pretty simple. So just about anybody should be able to do that one, right? I'm going to assign that to my structural designer and hit complete my task. Continues on to whatever the next stage may be. In this case, the next stage is the actual structural designer. So if I restore, there it is, refresh rather, my menu, I now see here that I have something to do. And if I go through the specifications and notes and whatnot, I'll be able to see that I have to add handholds to this. So I open that project up. I open the design up. See my design. I see I need to go ahead and add some handholds. I could do just about anything to this design at this point. Yes, Web Center built it running a standard. I can go in and do just about anything to this. I can rerun it with different dimensions. I can add handholds. I can add windows. I can do just about anything that you can do in RDS CAD. And we'll just add another one here. So now I've added my handholds. I could save this and continue on, or maybe if I know that this customer requires that those flaps show up differently with some angle to them, I can convert it to 3D. Looks like I've got two different ARD files open here with the same name. Excuse me. Actually, I'm going to change those flaps. Add some angle to them. And file. Excuse me. Publish a version. Something about my sharing today makes that window look weird, but there we go. So now I've updated that. I'm going to go ahead and save this out. I could go ahead and create my step and repeat from this. If I wanted to generate an MFG, I could do that as well. Actually, go here. And I need to update this version as well. Oops. Have to hit OK. There we go. There we go. Finally, we can go back over to Web Center, log in as the customer. Customer again has a to-do list and slightly different options at the top. Obviously, we're not letting our customers in this case create a project, so they're missing that button. This customer's kind of behind as well. I'm gonna have them open up an older one here. And of course, customer would have gotten notification via email if that was the way we had Web Center configured rather than just clicking straight around here. At this point, the customers can come in, zoom around. There's a bunch of different tools in here to measure. So I can measure the width of my flaps. If I've got the handholds, I can measure the correct handholds. We can view it in 3D, of course. We can view that back in 2D. We can turn separations on and off. If we've got graphics, we can turn dimensions on and off. All such things. Customer can approve or reject. They can also mark up or ask questions at this point. So let's say we approve it. It continues on, whatever the next stage may be. In this case, let's say the customers approve the design shape, and now they want to send this further on and have, excuse me, have some graphics applied to it. Well, Web Center not only interacts with your customers and your users via an internet browser, it also interacts obviously with Artios CAD, and it also interacts with, say, Illustrator. So from Illustrator, I can come up here and say I want to open a file from Web Center, and I want to grab a project. Just grab this one here, structural design. So I've got a complete list of the projects that I'm invited to as whatever user I'm logged into. So again, this could be truncated down to just the projects that I'm allowed to see. Can go ahead and open that file right from the web. Excuse me. And if I want to further go through and use some of the more Esko tools here, I've got Esko Studio Designer. So I can see that 3D box shape. We can apply some graphics. Let's see, I probably gotta go grab some graphics here. There we go. Apply some graphics to it. Move my graphics around, get them pretty close. Refresh my view over here of my 3D. So yes, I've got my graphics pretty close, or no, I don't. And then of course, Esko has a ton of different tools. If I need to modify those graphics or do something to them, like say it looks like I need to move them up some, so let's move it up a little bit and refresh. There we go, got my graphics moved up. If I want to go back, make a new barcode or take an old barcode and fix it or do something to it, we've got all kinds of options there as well. In fact, let's say I wanted to go through here and take some text that's outlined. Zoom in here a little bit. Let's say that was supposed to be a 12-pack instead of a 10-pack. Esko has a fairly new tool you may or may not be aware of. Here we go. Called text recognition. Text recognition will take outline type, convert it back to live text, and give me the opportunity to make changes to it. So it gives me different fonts that it thinks my live text might have been back before it was converted to outlines. And it lets me go back and make changes to it. Oops, it doesn't look like I selected what I needed to select there. There we go. Oops, if you select the whole thing. There we go. So now that is converted back to live text. And I can then come in and make changes to it. Let's say maybe this was supposed to be a 12-pack or a 20-pack or whatever it may be. Make that a 12. I could then convert it back to outlines or whatever it may be. I zoom in on the other side here, 10-pack. Becomes a 12-pack when I refresh. There we go. Happy with my box. I can save this locally. I can export this to a workflow. I can save this right back to Web Center. So I can save it locally. I can save it back to Web Center. Or I could launch it into a workflow. That's what I'm going to do here. We're going to launch right into an automation engine workflow. And then for the sake of time today, because I promised I wouldn't bore you all with Web Center or with automation engine tools, I pre-baked the workflow. So my workflow runs through my single PDF, runs through, it gets stepped to a CAD file, exported out as a PDF. I didn't have to export it out as a PDF, but I was playing around with this workflow. And then I imaged it. In this case, it could have been TIFFs, it could have been LEN files. And then we can open those up in the view. So very simply, in what was that, 20 minutes or so, I went from a design request to step files ready for making plates. And that's about it for my little presentation this afternoon.
All right. Appreciate it, Sean. We do have one question, and this would be the time if you have questions for Sean, go ahead and submit that. I do have one here. Can this Web Center software only work with Artios?
Can the Web Center only work with Artios? That's a great question. Honestly, I don't have access to other tools. Can we use any file format within Web Center? Absolutely. We can work with any type of file within Web Center. It's a glorified FTP site if you want to look at it like that. What the interactivity is, can I show folds? Can I do graphics and that kind of stuff? I do not know. I haven't personally experienced it. I would imagine the answer is, again, limited to the application that you have, that you're exporting files from, and the types of files that you're capable of exporting from. That's pretty much my experience overall with different CAD files. Meaning, what can I do with a Simex application? What can I do with any of the others out there? It totally depends on the metadata that's embedded in the file, and until I test with it, I can't really tell you exactly.
Okay, I have another question. If you already have the standard Web Center, can it be converted to the corrugated version?
Yes. The answer can be complicated depending on the implementation of your current Web Center and what exactly you're doing with it. That's one of the great things about all of our pre-configured solutions these days. A pre-configured solution is an implementation. So you still have all the same base pieces of Web Center and or Automation Engine and or RPro Plus or DeskPack or whatever tools that you have. Those all remain exactly the same. There's no change in licenses or anything. You may need some additional pieces. You may not. If you have Web Center Advanced, you don't need any other pieces. But the pre-configured is a implementation. We come in with these workflows. We are up and running, within a week or so. You're up and running and running projects through it. I have had a few customers that were interested in converting over from whatever Web Center they had in the past to a pre-configured. There are a couple of caveats to that. Yes, it's absolutely doable. The question is, how much of what you have already built in Web Center do you want to keep? Do you want to start from scratch and implement? Do you want to keep everything that you have and then implement? Those are questions that you got to have with your local sales rep and their local ASMs.
Okay, it looks like there was a elaboration on the original question. It says, does it allow interaction with an ARD file, or could I use a DXF file, to be more specific?
Okay, the pre-configured solution that I showed you just now creates the ARD file on the fly within Web Center. So you don't even have to have RDOS CAD in order to have that pre-configured solution create that ARD file. Typically, a DXF file has very limited metadata in it. There's very little that I can do with automation with a DXF file. Again, you can upload a DXF file, you can approve and reject and view a DXF file. You can't fold up a DXF file in that viewer, but you could absolutely push a DXF file through the same workflow for approval purposes. Hopefully that answers that question.
Great. Okay, looks like that's all the questions. I appreciate your time today, Sean. Very, very nice job. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. So I guess, Rory, you're going to take over and do Digital Flexo Suite? No, I'm sorry, Print Control Wizard.
That is correct.
Awesome.
So, as Sean said, kind of the second half of the software session here is really around the Print Control Wizard. I'm going to start out by just kind of explaining what is Print Control Wizard, and then specifically what are we offering for Corrugated. This is another one of those products that's not yet released. Print Control Wizard for Corrugated is slated to be released in November, so we're very close to that release. And it's something, you can start talking to your sales rep about it, start gathering information about it, that sort of thing. So just because it is slated to release very soon. We have test files you can print also. So let me click in the right place. Okay. So just a quick definition. So Print Control Wizard is a product that actually has been released for 2 years now. It was originally released for flexible packaging. We have a labels version, and we're very soon, as I mentioned, going to have the corrugated version. The general premise behind Print Control Wizard is to put a software out there that simplifies and automates the process of selecting screening and building curves, dot gain curves for Flexo. So, the software starts out by asking you a bunch of questions about the printing conditions that you have. What kind of press is this? What kind of substrate is this? How are you imaging the plate? What kind of plate material? What LPI? All, tons and tons of different things that you can put in there as far as what kind of setup you have. It then will generate a target that, it's usually like a len file that you would then go and make a plate and print on the press. The software then allows you to analyze that print sample. In some cases, it's a visual analysis. For example, which one of these gives you the best ink laydown? And you select A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? In terms of creating curves, it's a target that can be automatically measured in from an I1IO, an automatic measurement device. So we've acknowledged and heard from a lot of our customers that, this process of selecting, screening, and building curves and all that is not as cut and dry as we all would like it to be. There's not always that expert inside every plant that has the skill set to do this. Now, I'm going to talk about the other part of Print Control Wizard, which is inside Print Control Wizard, there's advanced screening technology. This is really where our latest and greatest screening technology lives. So, we call that screening crystal screening, where it's, addressing the challenges of the different markets that we're talking about. So labels, flexible packaging, and corrugated. Obviously, today, our focus will be on corrugated. This was actually mentioned earlier in a question, talking about, the difference between, we'll say virgin fiber and recycled fiber, or high quality liners and low quality liners. We know that in the world of corrugated, it is all about saving pennies here and there and trimming out all of the cost in the process. Because after all, we're talking about a corrugated box, right? And a lot of times those decisions are not made based on our ability to print on those boards. I think Bob actually already mentioned that. But we have to contend with the challenges here. So the lower quality liners, whether it be kraft or a white top or any of those different, whether it's white or brown, doesn't matter. The recycled content has an impact on your ability to print. So we know that we have a bit of an issue getting good ink transfer on recycled liners. So Print Control Wizard for corrugated. The main thing that we're really focused on at the moment with PCW for corrugated is screening to help us transfer ink better on any liner for that matter. So we're able to kind of boost the laydown on kraft, white top, model white, even coated board. And what that does for us in many cases is allows us to reformulate our inks and save money on pigment in the long run and still match the same color we were getting before. So actually use an ink with less pigment in it. The most beautiful thing about this, I know those of you who have CDIs and have kind of been around with our technology for a while are all thinking in your head, yeah, but is it 4,000 DPI? Because that's been one of those things that really hasn't caught on in corrugated is imaging HD Flexo, the high resolution, which slows down your imager quite a bit with the thick plate. That's always been a barrier. With this new screening, it's all at 2540 DPI, which means you can run at full productivity speed and with Optics 100, which I already talked about, and get those benefits in the solids. So it's pretty exciting technology. I have a video, which I will now share, which is some pre-release customers talking about their experience. Bear with me a moment. I'm going to try and find the right button here.
Smurfit Kappa Inspired Pack and Contact go back many years. We've worked very closely with each other. We both like to think that we're pushing the boundaries of what a flexographic print can achieve.
Contact Originators is a reprographics and plate making company. We have a similar ethos. We both believe in innovation and driving the market and adding value to our customers. Contact Originators and Smurfit Kappa Inspire Pack have been testing the pre-release of Print Control Wizard and had some fantastic results over the last 6 months. Some of the improvements we're seeing are uplift on density on uncoated liners. We've seen benefits of crystal screening on both high-end work and the low grammage liners, and we've had some fantastic results regarding the dot quality and the highlights, and on the low end increased density and obviously reducing pigment if needed. It applies screening through workflows, and we can run the plates at low resolution as opposed to high resolution like previous screenings we've been using.
Less impression is required, allowing text, tone and heavy solids on the one plate. In real terms, this means savings on both plates used and setup times. Cost savings will vary from user to user, but the benefits are real.
So the benefits we see by using Print Control Wizard is a reduction in fluting, a reduction in test liner, increase in coverage, reduces board crush, all this along with sustainability of recycled liners. We have seen significant benefits in the laydown of white, particularly on brown and test liner substrates. So we're taking colour to a better strength.
On top, we can print really dense metallics, great opaque whites, as well as achieving grade A barcode readings on laser coding applications.
In addition, Print Control Wizard gives us sustainability improvements, allowing us to print good quality on low grammage paper. We see the improvements on plate performance we're using Print Control Wizard works particularly well with the softer corrugated plates of the new generation type that's hit the market over the recent years. We have seen Print Control Wizard bring up to 20% savings on ink formulation cost. We can take work that was historically pre-print or litho into the post-print sector.
Print Control Wizard will help us enhance our customers' print requirements and also help us with the low grammage material that we're being asked to supply as well. This will only help the customer's brand on shelf.
Print Control Wizard simplifies the process. It gives us unrivaled plate consistency, repeatability. This allows our customer to go into different markets that they've never been in before, to compete in areas previously dominated by preprint, litho and digital.
Okay, so that's some pretty powerful statements by a pretty reputable source. That is one of our customers in the UK, which is where our product manager lives. So that's a convenient location for him. We do have a few customers here in the US also helping us with the pre-release. So let's go a little deeper here. We talk about cost savings. We have an actual example here. This was actually from the same customer you just saw. Ink formula A, ink formula B. So here we have, you see the same color here really, standard Flexo, and then after we've applied Print Control Wizard crystal screening to the job. We actually, once we selected the correct screening, we're able to reformulate the ink. Obviously the ink company came in and did that. And achieve the same color with a different formula. And that formula was much cheaper. They're calculating just for this one ink that they're able to save $3,000 per year. If you start multiplying that across all your products and all your inks and all your presses and everything, the cost savings becomes quite large. So this is a powerful thing. Now, obviously, there's some effort that has to be put into reformulating the inks and doing this the right way. On the other hand, you could just say, I'm going to have a stronger ink color. I'm going to go with a bigger pop with my process colors and things like that. But this is really what we believe is the true value of Print Control Wizard for corrugated, at least these solid screens. So this is what the test looks like. You may have seen in that video, this was the test they were printing. On the test, they have a variety of different types of images, barcodes, different size text, and solids, of course. And we're showing different screening patterns compared to a standard solid. And this is, a pretty simple analysis. You can look at this and say, which one is giving me the best ink laydown on the substrate, and still maintaining good quality with all the other attributes like barcodes and so on. So you get a taste for what these patterns are. Again, these are all at 2540 DPI, not 4000 DPI, so they're run at full speed on the CDI. There's a pretty simple thought here. You run the test, you select the screen. So what's coming next? Now, the first release of Print PCW for corrugated will be primarily focused on solids. We are also working on screening for the high quality segment of corrugated. It's unclear to me when this will be available, whether it be this first release or later. So I just want to, again, make sure everybody understands this is in development. This one's a little bit, has a little bit more to go as compared to the solid. But what is this? This is mainly focused on the highlights. And it's also combining solid screening, some of which you just saw on that other test form, with highlight screening. And it's really kind of taken the same concept that we've used in flexible packaging for years and years and applying it to corrugated. For really the first time, we've never had screening where we've got solid screening and special highlight screening combined into one screen, specifically for corrugated at a lower resolution. So here's just some feedback that we've received from a pre-release customer. And it's really about the highlights, right? We're able to have a better, cleaner, smoother fade to zero, and more stable highlights as well. I mean, we've had screening in before, Samba Flex and so on, but this is an improvement on that, and also combining that with some of the new solid screening technology. And with that, I would like to open it up for questions. I do not currently see any questions, so if you have one, now would be the time to submit that. Okay, no questions. So we are ready now to move into the final part of our session today, and that is the panel discussion. So we're going to ask all of our panelists to join us on the stage. I'm going to go ahead and unshare myself here. We'll just wait just a moment for them to join us. We see one of them.
Can you hear me?
We hear him.
All right.
Okay, we're just waiting on two more. Bear with us just a moment, folks. We've got people in the background helping our speakers out here. Okay. I'm told that they're coming. Be a good time to submit a question if you have one. I will say while they're joining, I'll talk just a little bit about the format of this town hall discussion. So what we did was we gathered up some of the most experienced people we could think of in the corrugated industry, and these are people who understand flexo printing very deeply. So we're really, really excited to have them with us. We'll introduce them here shortly. But the idea here is really to have a discussion. We have kind of put together some staged questions, really just to get the conversation moving. We would encourage the audience to submit a question if you have a topic that you want to hear us discuss. I think that would be great. So just go ahead and put some thought into that. I do have a question. It looks like about the last session that we did. And the question is, will you need an XPS to utilize the HQPP, so the high quality post-print print control wizard? That is a good question. And I don't think we're at the stage yet in development where I'm able to answer it. I know that it is not required for kind of the solid screening technology, but I can't really say for sure whether it will be required for the high quality screening. I had another question. Thanks for the questions, guys. Help us fill this time.
For sure.
Is there a way to recycle a photopolymer plate? Wow. Okay, Bob, you want to take that one?
Sure. So we don't. We use photopolymer. Our scrap, we from our plant, we recycle it, and not recycle it, but we incinerate it, and so it becomes a sustainable option. But we don't take photopolymer plates and turn them into new photopolymer plates, if that's the question. That's a little too difficult to do. I'm not sure if that answered the question or not.
Yeah, it'd be a tall order to take a polymerized photopolymer and make it back into a light reactive material, but you could grind it up and turn it into a road, right?
Right.
Okay, I apologize, everyone. We seem to be having a technical issue here with two of our panelists. So they're refreshing the browser as we speak. Bob, I suppose you could go ahead and introduce these guys.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that. So once they all get on, I'll do the introductions now. So I'll start with Tim, since y'all can see him. Or start with Jack. That's fine too.
Go with Tim.
We'll go with Tim, since he's live and in person. So Tim is the Senior Vice President of Sales at Printer Channel SGS and Company. He's responsible for delivering products and services to the printer segment for SGS. He spent his entire career in the printing industry for the last 30 years and been with Southern Graphic since 2001. He's responsible for all SGS services, supporting gravure, flexo, offset, and corrugated printing clients, and is based in South Carolina, and a huge Clemson fan, I might add.
I am indeed.
So,
go Tigers.
Who's not, right?
So maybe we'll go to Jack next, since Jack's on board now.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
No problem.
There we
go. So Jack is Vice President of Sales at Printron. Printron's a leading supplier of pre-press services, printing plates, and cutting dies for the flexo industry. He's been involved in this industry for over 43 years. He gets very active. He's very active in. Oop. I don't know if that's feedback from me or not. I think that's better. Been very active in the high graphics arena, both pre-press and plate development mounting systems. Very active in trade organizations, most recent a past member of the board of directors of the FTA. Certainly heard him speak many times at many national meetings and regional workshops, and he's married to his lovely wife, Mary, for 49 years, 2 kids and 5 grandkids. So welcome, Jack. And the third panelist is Bob Borkowski from Pratt Industries. Bob is the Director of Operational Excellence at Pratt Corporate. He's got 40 years of experience in the printing and corrugated industry, starting as a press operator and printer on flexo presses and die cutters, as well as high graphics printing. So I'm sure Bob's experiences of starting out on the press certainly knows a lot about printing, and we welcome Bob to the panel as well. So thank you all for participating and joining us.
Yeah, we're still missing Bob, but we will, just for the sake of time, go ahead and get started, and hopefully he'll be able to join us here shortly. So first of all, thank you everyone for agreeing to join us today. It's really an honor to have both you guys here. I've known both you guys since my career started. You know, I was probably in my early 20s when I met both you guys. And yeah, and which now I'm in my late 20s. So
that sounds good.
Yeah, but really an honor to have you guys, and glad you could be here today. So as I said, audience, you guys are welcome to submit a question, try and participate to the best of our abilities here with this system. I'm going to kick it off with our first kind of staged question. How is your company adapting to these new times and way of doing business? I think specifically talking about COVID-19.
Sure.
As if I had to say that, but
Right.
That is the way, isn't it?
It is. I can start if you want me to, Jack. It doesn't matter to me.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
And let's, I mean, you know, like Rory said, we'll just have a conversation about it. But, you know, there've been a lot of challenges, obviously, with COVID and what it's done to our businesses. You know, one of the first things that we had to do was try to figure out how to work remotely. And we did that fairly quickly over probably a 10-day period. We've got pretty much all of our graphic artists and customer service reps, project managers, all of those type people, accounting, all of that working remotely. That was the first step we took. And obviously that was a challenge, but I think it showed us that, you know, we can work that way. There are some limitations to that from a collaboration. It takes a while to get used to working through Teams or Zoom or whatever product you're using to try to have virtual meetings. But I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that over the last several months. One of the harder things for us to do, especially from, you know, commercial side, sales side, is we don't get out to the presses, right? We can't be there for press runs. How do we do color approvals, those types of things? How do you do a fingerprint and make sure the fingerprint's being run the way we want it to be run? Those were probably some of the challenges that it took us a little bit longer to get through. And we did that trying to utilize the same virtual tools as much as we can, relying on spectral data, getting samples, you know, having somebody show us on the camera what actually is going on press. You know, just some of the things that we've done anyway.
Yeah, I think we can probably echo that, Jim. You know, I mean, that's, but first of all, we're all very fortunate because we work in essential businesses, you know, because there's a lot of people that can't say that. You know, thank God the packaging industry is essential and we're suppliers, you know. We've had a great number of our people working remotely. Heck, I worked from home for 10 weeks and I've never done that in my life before. And it was a new experience and it worked out pretty well. But, as far as orders go, I mean, about 95% of the orders that we get come in by the internet or by email to start with, have for years, actually. So, and all the shipping is done same as it has been prior to that. So from that perspective, it's been easy. Salespeople are stir crazy. They want to get out and bang on doors and see their friends and see their customers, and we've done that on a limited basis so far, mainly because most of our customers their doors aren't open. So they've had to be a little creative in how they picked up prints. A lot of things we do, we work from printed samples, so we have to pick those up, and there've been some arrangements that have been made, so to speak. Have done very little cross-country traveling at all, but that'll come around in time. But it's just it's just been different, as we all know.
And it looks like Bob has joined us. Welcome,
Yes.
Bob.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, everybody. I switched computers and now it's working, different computer.
No problem at all. Glad you could join us.
Thanks for having me.
Hate to put you on the spot, but we're talking about how we've had to adjust to COVID-19 and some of the new ways of working. And I am curious to hear your perspective on that, working as a converter. And these two guys are suppliers to the converters. What have you seen on your end?
Well, it's very interesting. The last 15 years of my career, I've basically spent every week on the road, and now I'm sitting in the same seat for over 6 months now. So it takes a lot to get used to, as the rest of the panel could surely admit to that as well. It's a bit challenging, managing from afar, depending on what we're working on. But we've got some great people in our plants that I've worked very close with for years, and we're able to, get through trials, and we're still doing trialing and all kinds of stuff on all different types of products and better ways of doing business. It just spend more time on Zoom. Zoom calls are a great thing, right, Tim?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a lot more challenging. It takes a little bit better planning, I think, to bring everybody together. One of the biggest problems that we're having, and we want to keep our employees safe more than anything else in the world. We haven't allowed people to come into our plants. Tim and his group, it's very infrequent that they can come in. So it's been very challenging from that aspect.
And I think the communication has to be at a higher level because we're remote to each other, right? I think that's something that's taken a while to get used to, is to try to get everybody to communicate at a higher level, so you're making sure you're not dropping any of the details in projects, right?
Yeah, by having great processes in place in all your plants, depending on what process you're looking at, from pre-press to operations to delivery, it really comes out in the wash where it's more critical now than ever. And you guys know as well as I do. I mean, our industry is booming right now. We're so busy because of all the e-commerce stuff, and the segment of business has changed dramatically over the last 6-8 months. That it's trying to work through this and do the business shift. It's challenging, but everybody's doing a good job. I've talked to a lot of counterparts in other companies that it's challenging as well, but you find a way to do it.
Yep. Well, I think at the end we'll all be better than we were before. So.
Agreed.
Yeah, good point.
Totally agree. Yep.
Okay. We'll go to the next question. So what recent technological innovations have been most important in improving the quality of direct print corrugated?
Hey, I'm gonna take that one. You got the last one first, Tim. I'll jump in on this. I know these guys from DuPont and Esko would want me to say that it's one of their products, but and they are. Don't get me wrong, Bobby. But for years, well, quite honestly, my answer is simple. Corrugated presses today hold better register than they did before. Okay.
100%.
So, you can use the better screening technologies, the better plate technologies, the better mounting technologies, but you're still not going to be able to duplicate litho, which everybody's trying to do, unless the press holds register. So, I mean, for years, we watched printers who were good 85-line printers, and they wanted to print 110 line, and wanted to print 120 line or even higher. Some of them tried it. Some of them actually got fairly good at it, but over a period of time, we saw them falling back to 85 line. And the reason why is they couldn't hold register. They had to slow the press down to hold register. That created more waste. They spent a lot of time, sorting through bales of corrugated to get enough good samples to sell their customer. Now that's not necessarily the case. Now, there aren't a lot of presses, but there are presses that will hold amazing register, and people can run consistently at 120 line. We have people that are doing close to 150 line on a regular basis. So, and they're running fast, which is amazing, is most amazing to me that they can actually do that. So to me, that's the number one thing. Everything else is great. All the other products are fantastic and really help. But if the press doesn't hold the kind of register that you need, then they're all for naught.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on Jack's comments there. He's absolutely spot on. Years ago, people would take and rebuild machines. Nowadays, we're going out and building plants and putting brand new machines in. Back when I started out in the early 80s, actually 1980 as a pressman, butt trap was unheard of. You just didn't do it. We're doing butt trap regularly now on a machine that can do 16,000 pieces an hour. It's the machinery has come a very long way over the last 15, 20 years. But Jack, you're spot on with your comment as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks. Thank you.
Exactly where I was going to go too, Jack. I mean, I think the press side tools, the software that's available as well. Just the registration monitoring systems that are on the press. It's just the press itself, but 100%.
It's amazing when somebody sends you an order and it's got 6 or 7 colors in it, and they say, we're going to run that in 4 color. And, we're going to build the type, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And you say, well, okay, if you're sure, we would recommend you do this. No, we're going to run it in 4 colors. And it turns out to be a beautiful piece. But granted that not everybody can do that, but there is equipment out there that can do that.
Well, the advances in print technology, the advances in software technology that DuPont and Esko both offer, obviously has made a huge impact in that as well. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. I remember when TDR first came out, and I first tried it in the early 80s. It was the best thing since sliced bread compared to natural rubber that we used to use, and used to staple print plates on the drum sometimes. And then we go from analog and go to digital, and there was another step change. It just made it easier for everybody, for the pressmen to go out there and do their job and do a quality job and run for prolonged periods of time by measuring their pH and measuring their viscosity and making sure they got the right analog rolls in the machine to do the 2 and 3 color work and the 4 color CMYK, et cetera, at the speeds that are needed to make the plant profitable. I mean, that's, the bottom line is if you're not making money, you're not going to stay in business. So you still got to do this stuff at high speed, and everybody's competing against everybody, and everybody can do it better. So there's always the advances that always come upon every year upon year, depending on whether it's software, it's hardware, it's machinery, whatever. It makes life a lot easier. And with the new wave of digital coming in for digital printing, it's a whole different thing. And I know you guys don't want to hear that from DuPont, but that's the future. Just got to reinvent yourself. That's all.
Correct. I do think the softer durometer plates, like Bob was talking about earlier in the discussion, that doesn't seem like a big thing, but I've seen situations where it's allowed when you switch from the harder to the softer. It not only gives you better density, but the machine runs faster and still gets better color. So, I mean, I do think those little things like that are having an impact.
I agree with that, Tim. That's been, before that it was the digitally imaged flat top dot that changed everything. And then the softer plate in a combination with that is great. One of the earlier questions related to screening with the DLC plate, the softer plate. We haven't done a lot of it, but we've done some testing. We have a customer that wanted to run. He said, "Can we use that plate for process color?" They run produce boxes all day, all night long, but 90% of it is process work. So we ran a press characterization with the same plate image that we would use with DPC, and it was excellent, except for the highlight dots, which there was a little bit more gain in the highlight dots. So, as a result, we both sat down and said, it really isn't enough of a benefit to go this route. But for the most part, the screens, and this was an 85 line or 87 line screen, so the screens held really well and they printed really well.
Another thing that we talked about earlier, and Roy was saying earlier, and Roy, I'm sorry to call you out a little bit on this. You said low quality liners, recycled. Pratt Industries is a 100% recycled company. That's all we do all day long, and we do a good job at it. And the paper is really high quality recycled content. So it's a different animal. Absolutely, I think everybody that's on this panel or on this call listening today, every bit of fiber has some type of recycled content. Just depends on what degree of recycled content is in that liner. I tell you, I've done numerous testings with the new DLC product. Either a very thin plate or a thicker plate. And there's a difference between the 155 and there's a difference between the 250 plate. It's very noticeable, and different applications for different things. But let me tell you, my pressmen in all our plants, right? We're starting to use this stuff in every single plant now. It just makes life so much easier for pressmen. It really does. And we all forget too often, the person that's actually got to go out there and do the work, and they have to wash the plates and keep everything in check and obviously not damage it. The strength of this material is awesome. And then everything that goes in behind it. I'm starting to sound like a salesman for DuPont, but man, it made a huge difference in our converter. It really, truly did.
Excellent. Well, we will move on. Great conversation. What are the biggest problems facing corrugated converters today as it relates to flexo printing? Who wants to start? Bob, why don't you go ahead, since you're right there at the press more than anybody. We lost him.
Hey. Well, Tim, you want to jump in? Boy, just to get out of answering a question. Wow.
He didn't like the question.
So, I'll take a stab to start with. Jack, you took the last one first. I think the biggest problems facing the converters as well as us in the trade shops, I think, is getting the right people, is hiring people, training people. I think it's both. Everything is moving so fast. I don't think that anybody is doing enough training, I guess, or as good a training as we need to be doing, because we're having to get people in production faster than we have in the past, and that's a challenge. That's something I think we've got to come to grips with as an industry, as I just think as a society. How do we get people trained up faster? There he's back.
Yeah, I think you're right. Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tim. That's been an issue for a long time. It really has. We've had people that have added digital presses into their mix, and the operators off the high-end Flexo want to run the digital press, because they don't have to get their hands dirty. They don't have to deal with misregistration. They don't have to have any of those issues. So it's going to be harder and harder to get the right people. I mean, other things we've already talked about: registration, lightweight recycled liners, ink trapping on coated paper. That's been an issue for as long as coated paper's been around. So some people are a lot better at it than others.
Yep. Agreed.
What about just kind of tacking onto that? If we take it up another level and we talk about, the brands, the people actually, purchasing the packaging, what are they after? What problems are they trying to solve?
I mean, obviously sustainability is a big one for them, but I think it all revolves around how do they reduce the inventories? How do they get, a better product for a better price, I think is part of it. But probably faster turnarounds and reducing inventories are the two biggest things that I hear.
Okay, we don't do a lot of that on that work on that end, Rory. But I would think it seems like a lot more of them would like to be able to utilize direct print corrugated flexo more than they do now, because of some of the things that Tim just mentioned, as far as the cost and the availability and getting it quicker and buying smaller quantities and things like that. So the better people get at printing and taking that line screen up higher and holding register and repeating themselves, probably I would think that the brands would be happier when that happens, and that they would be thrilled to have that happen.
Right. Bob is back.
I don't know how long. Sorry. I have no idea what's going on.
I lost it twice earlier. I shouldn't even say that out loud because it took a couple minutes to get it back.
Bob, you want to take a stab at the question here?
The biggest thing, in my opinion, is wanting to do more with less. Of course, the CPGs really want you to be able to turn things on a dime, speed to market. I think that's the biggest problem we're facing today is speed to market. Yep. If we can't get out there and get a product and get it regionalized, et cetera, that causes a lot of issues as well. But I think that's, and it's getting away from the actual printing aspect of doing it. But I think it's the biggest problem we have today is you want it now and they want it yesterday. And it takes a little bit more time than that to get it.
Everybody's getting squeezed. I mean, every part of the process gets squeezed. And if on those CPGs, if you don't get everything you need up front, it just compresses the time even more, because then you're going to have to go back and get more information.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think will be the biggest or the most important changes to the corrugated industry over the next 10 years?
You don't want to hear it. One word: digital.
Yeah, well, that was at the top of my list. Yeah.
We sell digital inks, Bob, so we're looking to cover that base.
Oh my God! You know what? You got to just reinvent yourself as a company, from your side and from our side. Not everybody's going to want to do their own damn rips. That's all there is to it. So there's a whole new business market that's going to come out there because of all this. Now, it may not happen before. It's not going to happen before I retire. I'm not going to see the full brunt of it, but I could see in 30 years from now a full digital plant. I mean, the next 10 years. I just don't know. It's moving fast right now.
Well, we've been extremely. Yeah, we have been extremely encouraged by the amount of new flexo presses that have come into the marketplace in the last 5 years. It's been, because as people in the plate business, Tim can attest to this, that 15 years ago already at the Plate Makers Association, we're getting hammered over, the digital revolution. You guys better watch out. And it certainly is. It certainly is coming. It's a section of the market right now. And if I think if digital ink ever becomes competitive, I think we're all going to be in trouble. If the price comes down. And I know it is for some of the digital manufacturers, but they're not making high-speed equipment yet. So I think that's a huge issue.
Jack, I was going to mention, Jack, that I remember that FPPA, I think it was 2004, when the speaker came up and talked about a digital press going somewhere in Texas, and we all, as suppliers and you as trade shops, said, "Oh man, our world's going to come to an end." But that was literally 16 years ago.
That's about what I was thinking, Bob.
Here we are. Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, it's coming, right? It's all about when and how fast does it integrate into the business. I still personally think it's, probably 10 years out before it's going to have a major impact all the way throughout. But I agree, Bob. I don't think it'll happen after I retire, I hope anyway. But I think there will be niches or parts of the market that go quicker. And I think we're already seeing that, right? And I think displays fit that segment, digitally printed. I think it could take some of the litho market, maybe the litho lam market, possibly in certain segments. So I do think that there will be pieces of the market that disappear faster than the brown box work, per se. Even though I do think that some of the brown box work can be done that way. It all depends on the work.
We're always
and pricing.
Right.
I mean, you got to remember, we're always going to need. I mean, there's how many sheet plants there are in the U.S. There's 200 corrugators and probably 400 or 500 sheet plants, and we're not going to. Not everything's going to change automatically. It's going to take a lifetime for somebody else. So there'll always be a need. It just depends on the market. That's all.
Exactly. 100%.
Okay. How has the need for sustainability changed your business in the recent years? Bob, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, it hasn't changed us at all. I mean, that's what we're all. I mean, our company. That's what we're all about. I mean, that's. Right. Yeah, Tim, you're smiling because you know it, right?
Yep, exactly.
It's business for us. It's everybody else is catching up with us. Sorry, guys. We see a lot of changes too. There's a lot of nuances that are coming out from the big companies. There's a lot of additions to what we call sustainability. And I think it's absolutely for the best. There's no doubt about it. We have an obligation to the world to take care of everything, whatever industry you're in. You want to make sure that you're not wasting product. One of the big things in our company is we track waste to the nth degree. We know where it all goes. We don't want to have to redo stuff. We don't want to throw stuff away. We want to reduce our footprint. Our carbon footprint, everything about it. It's something I've been living and breathing for 15 years, and it's second nature to me. So, and I know it's a lot of people on this call too. They're in the same boat. They're feeling the same way. It's come predominantly out of Europe, out of necessity, and then we gotta get on board here totally in the U.S. with everybody, not just segments.
All right, Jack, do you have anything to add to that?
Really, everything we've done some things that have resulted in better waste system. For example, the digital workflow, has eliminated film and the whole film processing part of it. There have been other, things within your building that you do, but there isn't anything other than that we really do that affects that, I guess. That was a question I had a hard time finding anybody that was going to give me some things to answer that question for.
Yeah, I agree, Jack. In our business, you know, we always get asked that question by both the printers and the CPGs. You know, what are you going to do to help me with sustainability? And, you know, I think we look internally, and I think we can eliminate waste, do more recycling, you know, but that's not going to be moving the needle of what we can do. And I think, you know, it's a hard question for us. We're still struggling with it. I think the best thing we can do is get better. I think if we get more consistent, if we have a better product going out to the printers, then the printers have less scrap, less downtime. That is the way we can affect sustainability more than any other way, is what we can do to empower them to have less scrap and less waste. And then we're helping the overall value chain as a whole.
Great answer. I love that, Tim.
Yeah.
So let me, if I could ask a question. So we know that PVC is not a recyclable product, but yet it's used as the dominant carrier sheet. If you had a more of a recyclable carrier sheet, would that be of interest?
It would, for sure, but you know, we've tried some of those other products, competing products. I mean, you lose some of the benefits of that PVC material. There are still some limitations in the other materials that are out there that I've seen. Now, there might be something out there in the last year that I haven't seen, but I know we've tested it in the past, and it doesn't do everything it needs to do.
I agree, Tim, wholeheartedly. So, really, unfortunately, there isn't anything better right now.
Nope.
Okay. Thanks.
Good question.
I'm sure DuPont's working on something, though. That's why I asked.
No. I was just curious because I know it's a dominant one, and we've looked at it, and it's not recyclable. Yeah. So it's just a shame that everything that gets shipped out is pretty much on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the last question is, what would you be your advice for a young person who is looking at our industry with interest?
I'll go back to the way I answered the other question. It's an essential business. Okay. I mean, my wife has been telling her grandchildren that all summer long. You know, you got to look. You got to go try to work in an essential business. Learn something. So, the packaging business is a great business. Okay, it's been good for a long time, and whether it's packaging products or whether you're packaging food. It's a great business that's going to be around for a long time. So,
yeah, packaging is not going away. We're going to continue to package food in new and better ways. I think, you know, the way I would explain it is there's a lot of change coming for all of us. And printer side, our side, the trade shop side, digital, all of the different, you know, things that are impacting our industry. If you want to be in something that's changing, then this is a good one to be in, I think. And it'll be here forever. So packaging is going to be here.
Yep.
You know, one thing I'd like to add to all that, I agree with everything you guys have said. But for a youngin coming into the business today, I would say you need to have some patience. You know, everybody's looking for a quick hit and fame to gain, you know, the moon, the stars, and everything. But you know, sometimes you got to do your time, and you know what, you got to understand what everything is about. And I have a passion for what I do. I absolutely love what I do. I wouldn't be in it this long if I didn't. But you know, just be patient. Hook up with a good mentor. And just get to know the business, because it's a great business. It'll keep your mind going 24 hours a day.
Great.
Okay. Well, I just want to say I appreciate your time today. Is there anything, just to kind of close up the session, that any of you guys would like to add before we wrap it up?
No, I would just like to thank DuPont and Esko for the opportunity, obviously, and thank you for what you've done for the industry over the last 25 or 30 years. It's been phenomenal. The products that you've come out with work, period. And they've helped us become better, and they've helped the industry become better. So keep it up.
Appreciate it.
Agreed.
Means a lot.
Yeah, I'll echo what you're saying, Jack. I mean, I've gotten involved with DuPont well over a year ago when they reintroduced this product, the low durometer. I remember using it many years ago when the first time it came out, it failed. But this second go around, it's really made life a lot easier. And, Bob met me about a mile from my house, and we had some discussions. And it was a game changer. It really was. And, I've dealt with Esko for many years. I'm not as big on that side of the business, but first of all, thank you everybody for putting up with us and my connections, because they were horrible. And thank you very much for inviting me on this panel. I actually really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I did as well. Thank for this forum. I think it's good to talk about what's going on. I think we've got to do that as an industry and continue to do that. Thanks.
Yeah, and we couldn't have picked any better people to be here. So thank you guys again.
Yep.
So
are there any questions, Rory, from the
there are no
before we sign off?
There are no questions at all.
Okay.
I just want to go ahead and wrap it up and say thank you to everyone who joined to watch us. There were great questions earlier on, and hope everybody got something out of this. And there is a recording that's going to be available to anybody who needs that or wants to share it. Just let us know and we'll get that to you. So with that, I'll wrap it up. Appreciate everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Thank you.